Hey everyone, welcome. If you're an infrastructure admin gearing up for the Nutanix NCP-MCI 7.5 certification, you are in exactly the right place. Today we're doing a highly focused explainer dedicated entirely to section 10.5 of the blueprint, which is all about built-in categories. We're going to unpack exactly how Nutanix Flow handles security categorizations, we'll break down the essential rules, the logic behind them, and most importantly, the specific scenarios you are absolutely going to be tested on. My goal today is to give you total clarity so you can walk into that exam feeling incredibly confident.
Okay, let's just dive right into it. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with 1. Why categories matter. Then 2. A walkthrough of application categories. 3. A walkthrough of specialty categories. 4. The minefield of exam traps. And finally, 5. The cheat sheet of key facts.
All right, section 1. Why categories matter. So before you go memorizing a bunch of rules, we really need to look at the underlying philosophy here, because the exam heavily tests this massive paradigm shift. Historically, we all used network-centric security, right? That meant relying on IP addresses, VLANs, and subnets. The problem was, if a machine moved or its IP changed, your firewall rules completely broke. Nutanix Flow entirely flips this by using workload-centric security. Instead of looking at IPs, it scrutinizes traffic to and from virtual machines, or VMs, using categories. It is completely agnostic to the network configuration. It literally does not matter where the VM resides in the data center or how its IP address changes. The security simply follows the workload.
Which brings us to the formal definition of a category. A category is basically just a logical grouping of VMs used as the basis for applying policy-driven security. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is this: security policies are applied to categories, not directly to individual VMs. Think about what a massive operational advantage this is. It means your rules scale automatically. If you spin up 50 brand new web servers tomorrow and assign them to the web category, they instantly inherit all the necessary security policies. You don't have to make a single manual firewall update. It's a total game changer.
Moving right along to section 2, walkthrough of application categories.
Nutanix provides 3 primary application categories built right into Prism Central. First up is AppType. This defines the application itself, so things like Microsoft Exchange, Apache Spark, or maybe a custom internal app. Now listen closely to this part because it is an absolute must-know for the exam. Every single security policy must be associated with an AppType value. It's not optional, it is mandatory. Second, we have environment. You use this to isolate life cycles, basically keeping your development, testing, and production servers strictly separated from one another. And third is AppTier, which divides a single application into distinct levels, like a web front-end, an application logic layer, and a back-end database.
You can think of applying these categories as a logical, top-down progression. It's almost like a puzzle. Step 1, you tell the system what the VM actually does by assigning an app type. Step 2, you tell the system where this VM lives in its lifecycle by assigning an environment. Step 3, you tell the system how this VM functions internally within its application by assigning an app tier. By structuring your VMs exactly like this, you create a highly granular zero-trust framework, and you do it without ever touching a subnet mask. Let's ground this with a concrete example so you can see exactly how policies reference these categories instead of IPs. Imagine you want to allow a specific group of users to access a specific part of an application. Instead of writing out a super complex rule based on IP ranges, in Flow, your rule simply says, allow the category Department Engineering to access the category AppType Issue Tracker, specifically targeting the category AppTier Database. See how human-readable that is? It's perfectly logical. And if an engineering VM changes its IP tomorrow, no problem at all. The rule still works perfectly.
Okay, section 3, walkthrough of specialty categories.
Let's pivot a bit and see how this builds, because the exam absolutely loves testing these specialty categories, starting with quarantine. Say you suspect a VM is compromised. Naturally, you place it in quarantine. But there are 2 very distinct values here, and test takers frequently get them mixed up. Strict quarantine isolates the VM from all inbound and outbound traffic, period. 0 exceptions. Forensic quarantine, however, isolates the VM from all traffic except traffic to and from categories that contain forensic tools. This is huge because it allows your security team to safely probe and investigate the infected machine without risking wider network exposure. Make sure you can clearly differentiate strict from forensic on the test.
Next up, we have the ADGroup category. This one is managed by Flow's ID-based security, which you'll also hear called the ID firewall. For a quick refresher, AD stands for Active Directory, Microsoft's directory service for managing user identities, and VDI stands for Virtual Desktop Infrastructure, which are just user workstations hosted as virtual machines. The ADGroup category essentially takes groups from Active Directory and imports them straight into Prism Central. But here is the real magic of it. These categories are applied dynamically to VDI VMs the exact moment a user logs on. It literally links human identity directly to network security.
Now, there is a super critical distinction you have to understand for the exam. You have ADGroup and you have ADGroup default. As we just discussed, ADGroup applies dynamically when a user logon is detected. But think about a VDI VM just sitting idle at the Windows login screen. No user is logged in yet. How exactly is it protected? Well, that is where ADGroup default comes in. This category is applied to VDI VMs based on inclusion criteria, and it applies a default set of security rules without requiring any user logon whatsoever. It keeps the machine secure while it waits for a human.
Let's look at a real-world example of this in action to really cement the why behind ID-based security. A user grabs their morning coffee, sits down, and logs into a VDI VM. Behind the scenes, Prism Central's ID firewall detects that logon event. It checks Active Directory, sees exactly what groups that user belongs to, and automatically places that specific VM into the corresponding ADGroup categories. Instantly, all the security policies associated with that user's role are applied to that machine. This brilliantly illustrates how Flow automates policy based on the human being rather than the underlying machine.
Section 4, the minefield. Let's talk about exam traps.
All right, focus up for this one. We are now entering the specific rules, limitations, and edge cases where otherwise completely knowledgeable candidates end up losing points on the NCP-MCI 7.5 exam. First and foremost, VMs with an AppType category assigned are never categorized with an ADGroup. I'm going to say that one more time. AppType and ADGroup are mutually exclusive. A VM is either serving an application role or it's serving a dynamic user desktop role. It absolutely cannot be both simultaneously within the Flow security framework. If you see a scenario on the exam trying to mix these two together, you'll know right away it's a trap.
Next up is what I like to call the log-off trap. It sounds completely counterintuitive, which is exactly why they love using it for an exam question. The Flow ID firewall does not detect user log-offs. Yep, you heard that right. If a user disconnects or logs out of their VDI session, the ADGroup category is not stripped away. The applied policy actually stays persistent on that VM until the very next user login occurs on that same machine. That new logon is what finally overwrites the old categories with the new users categories.
Finally, consider what happens when a user is a member of multiple Active Directory groups at the exact same time. Let's say they're in HR, and they're also in management. When they log in, the VM gets placed into multiple ADGroup categories all at once. The exam is very likely to ask you how the resulting policy is handled in this situation. The answer is that the policy applied to the VM will be a union of the respective combination of inbound and outbound rules across all the AD groups the VM is placed into. It combines them into a union, it doesn't just pick one over the other.
Okay, Section 5, the cheat sheet of key facts.
We've covered a ton of ground today, from the core concepts all the way down to complex edge cases. So get ready to take a screenshot of this. You will absolutely need to know these 4 facts before you sit for the exam. Number 1, mandatory policy link. Every single security policy must be associated with an AppType. Number 2, quarantine contrast. Know the difference. Strict means zero traffic. Forensic means external forensic tools are allowed in. Number 3, the ADGroup rule. AppType and ADGroup categories are mutually exclusive on any single VM. And number 4, ADGroup overlap. If a user is in multiple AD groups simultaneously, it results in a union of the policy rules. Burn these 4 facts into your memory for sure.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final question to test your retention today. If a VDI VM just rebooted and is sitting there idle at the Windows login screen, which specific built-in category secures it before the user even types their password? Think back to our discussion on default inclusion criteria. If you immediately thought of ADGroup default, you are well on your way to mastering Section 10.5. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep reviewing those categories, and the very best of luck on your NCP-MCI 7.5 certification exam.